Episode 9, Silver Screen Immortals. Thursday morning arrived with Jade's phone buzzing insistently on her nightstand. She groaned, reaching for it without opening her eyes, and squinted at the screen. A text from Melissa. You've been radio silent for days. If you're dead, blink twice. If you're just being antisocial because of the hot Romanian, blink once. Jade smiled and typed back, alive, just been busy. Coffee tomorrow? You better have good gossip. I want details about the mysterious European man living in your basement. There are no details appropriate for public consumption. Jade. That means there are details. Spill immediately. Tomorrow. I promise. Now leave me alone. Some of us are trying to sleep in. She set the phone down and rolled over to find Victor already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with that intense focus that should have been creepy but had become comforting. Your friend is persistent, he observed. Melissa doesn't understand boundaries. It's part of her charm. Jade stretched, feeling pleasantly sore in ways that had nothing to do with yesterday's internet marathon and everything to do with what had happened after she'd woken up last night. What time is it? Nearly 10. You slept longer than usual. Because someone kept me up until 3 in the morning. You did not complain at the time. I'm not complaining now, just stating facts. Jade sat up, her curly red hair definitely achieving new levels of chaos. I don't have work until tonight. What do you want to do today? Victor's expression shifted to something that might have been mischief if he weren't an 800-year-old vampire warlord. I have been thinking about our activities yesterday. The internet videos, the cultural education. It occurred to me that there is one particular piece of modern entertainment we have not yet explored. What's that? The films about me. Jade's brain took a moment to process this. You want to watch Underworld? The movies you're in? I am curious. You have referenced them frequently. You wear clothing bearing imagery from them. You have admitted to watching them dozens of times. I wish to understand what fictional version of myself has captured your imagination so thoroughly. Oh my god. You want to watch yourself? This is either going to be amazing or absolutely terrible. Perhaps both. Jade felt a grin spreading across her face. This was potentially the best idea Victor had ever had. Watching him react to a Hollywood interpretation of his life and character, entertainment gold. Okay, yes, absolutely yes, we're doing this. Movie marathon. I'll make popcorn. I thought you hated the term marathon. That was for running. Movie marathons are different. Those are sacred. 20 minutes later, they were settled on the couch. Jade having assembled what she deemed the essential movie-watching supplies. Popcorn for her, blood bag from her mom's hospital connections for Victor, because apparently her mom had gotten very concerned about his anemia and pulled some strings, blankets, and her laptop connected to the TV for optimal viewing. Okay, Jade said, pulling up the first Underworld film with perhaps too much enthusiasm. Ground rules. You can't get mad at the historical inaccuracies because it's not actually about you. It's inspired by vampire mythology in general. Your existence and this movie existing are separate phenomena that happen to look similar. I make no promises about not critiquing inaccuracies. Fair enough. Also, Bill Nighy is a treasure and you're not allowed to insult his performance. Who is Bill Nighy? The actor who plays you. Well, the character named Victor who is similar to you, but not you. It's complicated. Just watch. She hit play, and the opening credits rolled. Gothic architecture, dark atmosphere, Kate Beckinsale in leather. Victor watched with the focus of someone analyzing enemy tactics, which was probably exactly what he was doing. The movie unfolded, introducing Selene, establishing the war between vampires and Lycans, building toward Victor's awakening. Jade snuck glances at Victor throughout, trying to gauge his reaction. His expression remained carefully neutral, but she could feel something through their bond. Amusement? Maybe? Disbelief? It was hard to tell. When Bill Nighy finally appeared on screen, Victor in full vampire elder regalia, speaking in that commanding voice, Jade felt Victor stiffen slightly beside her. "That is deeply strange," he said quietly. "Seeing yourself?" "Seeing someone else pretend to be me. The mannerisms are similar, the bearing. He has studied authority figures, clearly, but the voice is wrong. I do not sound like that." "You kind of do, though. The accent, the cadence, it's pretty close." "I most certainly do not sound like that." On screen, Victor was commanding his death dealers, demonstrating the cold authority that had made Jade's teenage self develop such an intense crush. Present-day Jade could appreciate the irony of watching this with the real Victor sitting beside her. "He's very commanding," she said. "Intimidating. You can see why people would follow him. Or fear him." That too. They watched as the plot progressed, the story of Lucien and Sonia unfolding, Victor's character becoming increasingly complex. When they reached the scenes about Sonia, Victor went very still. Jade felt a wave of emotion through their bond. Grief, regret, pain that even 800 years hadn't fully healed. She paused the movie. "We can skip these parts if you want." "No. I wish to see how they portrayed it. How they interpreted the worst decision of my long existence." The scenes played out. Sonia and Lucien's forbidden love, their secret relationship, the discovery, and finally the execution. Victor sentencing his own daughter to death for breaking the covenant. Bill Nighy played it with cold determination masking deep anguish, and Jade had to admit it was devastatingly effective. "He makes me sympathetic," Victor said quietly when the scene ended. "The portrayal suggests I struggled with the decision, that I was torn between duty and love." "Were you? In reality?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. "Yes. And no. I was angry, betrayed, rigid in my adherence to our laws. But underneath that, yes, I was torn. I simply did not allow that inner conflict to change my actions. The actor shows the humanity I refused to acknowledge in myself, and the name Destruxes that code of humanity refused to acknowledge. Art interpreting life, making sense of choices that maybe don't make sense. Perhaps. They continued watching, Victor providing occasional commentary. He criticized the fight choreography, no one would leave themselves that exposed, and the vampire politics far too simplistic, but seemed grudgingly impressed by the overall aesthetic and storytelling. When the first movie ended, Jade stretched. "Want to keep going? There are 4 more movies." "4 more? They made multiple films about this." "Your story was compelling enough to sustain an entire franchise. You should be flattered." "I am not certain flattered is the correct emotion. Bewildered, perhaps." They watched the second film, Evolution, which delved deeper into the vampire-Lycan conflict and introduced Marcus. Victor watched his character's resurrection with fascination. "I appear quite angry upon awakening," he observed. "You were betrayed by Marcus. Anger seems appropriate." "Yes, but the level of scenery chewing is excessive. I am dramatic, but not that dramatic." "You literally quoted poetry at me during sex last night. You're absolutely that dramatic." Victor looked offended in that dignified way of his. Quoting poetry during intimacy is romantic, not dramatic. "It's both. You're both. Own it." They were halfway through the third film when Jade's stomach growled loudly enough that Victor heard it despite not technically needing to hear anything. "You require sustenance," he said. I require pizza. Specifically, pizza and more popcorn. This is a marathon. Proper provisions are essential. While Jade ordered food, Victor continued watching, now fully invested in the franchise despite his critiques. When she returned to the couch, he was shaking his head at the screen. "This character makes profoundly poor tactical decisions," he said. "Why would anyone attack a Lycan stronghold with insufficient numbers?" "Because it looks cool, and this is an action movie, not a documentary about proper vampire military strategy." It could be both. It really couldn't. They finished the third and fourth films, Victor's commentary becoming increasingly entertaining as he relaxed into the experience. He critiqued everything from the historically inaccurate armor to the improbable physics of the fight scenes, but underneath the criticism, Jade could feel his enjoyment. He was having fun, even if he wouldn't admit it. When the final Underworld film ended, Victor sat back with an expression of contemplation. That was extraordinary, ridiculous in many ways, but extraordinary. To see one's life interpreted as entertainment, as mythology, it is surreal. Did it get anything right? About you, I mean. Not the plot, but the character. Victor considered this carefully. The pride, yes. The ruthlessness. The absolute certainty that I was acting correctly even when I was profoundly wrong. The loneliness underneath the authority. Those elements were accurate. The actor understood that power often masks pain. That was perceptive. Bill Nighy is good at his job. He is indeed. I am impressed by his ability to convey complexity through minimal expression, a valuable skill. So you liked seeing yourself? I would not say liked, but I found it enlightening and occasionally amusing, particularly when you made small sounds during scenes featuring my character. Jade's face went hot. I did not make sounds. You absolutely made sounds. Small sighs, occasional pleased hums, particularly during the scenes when my character was being commanding. I hate you. You love me. I can feel it quite clearly through our bond. Okay, yes, fine. I still find movie Victor attractive even though I have access to real Victor. Are you happy? Extremely. Jade threw a piece of popcorn at him. Your ego is showing. After 800 years, I have earned the right to occasional ego. Occasional? You have a running ego. A constant ego. An ego that never stops. And yet, you find it charming. I find it tolerable. There's a difference. Victor's smile suggested he knew she was lying, which she absolutely was. His confidence was actually incredibly attractive, even when it manifested as smug satisfaction at her continued attraction to both versions of him. Okay, Jade said, pulling up Netflix. If you think Underworld was surreal, you're gonna lose your mind at what I'm about to show you next. More vampire films? The most vampire film that has ever vampired. We're watching Twilight. Victor's expression shifted to suspicion. I have heard this title referenced on the internet. The context was rarely positive. That's because Twilight is objectively ridiculous, but it's also a cultural phenomenon, and you need to understand it to fully appreciate modern vampire mythology. Plus, your reaction to sparkling vampires is going to be hilarious. Sparkling vampires? Oh, Victor, you sweet summer child. Just watch. She pulled up the first Twilight film, and from the opening scene, Victor's confusion was palpable. Jade could feel it through their bond. Complete bewilderment at what he was witnessing. Why is the protagonist so aggressively ordinary? He asked, as Bella moved through her mundane high school existence. That's the point. She's supposed to be relatable, and every girl. She appears to have the personality of lukewarm water. Harsh, but not entirely inaccurate. When the Cullens were introduced, Victor sat up straighter, his attention sharpening. These are vampires? Yes. They attend high school? Yes. Voluntarily? Apparently, that cover story requires pretending to be teenagers repeatedly. It's a whole thing. Don't think about it too hard. I'm thinking about it. Why would immortal beings subject themselves to the tedium of adolescent education multiple times? The horror of it. Because Stephenie Meyer said so. That's the only answer. The movie continued, Edward and Bella's relationship developing with all the intensity of teenagers who just discovered the concept of attraction. Victor watched with increasing incredulity. He is watching her sleep, Victor said, without her knowledge or consent. This is deeply inappropriate. Yep. And the narrative presents this as romantic? Yep. I watch you sleep, but you are aware of it and have consented to my presence. This is stalking. This is what stalking looks like. You're not wrong. Twilight has a lot of problematic elements. But teenage girls in 2008 didn't care because the vampire was hot and sparkly. Sparkly? Wait for it. When the meadow scene arrived, Edward stepping into sunlight and revealing his sparkle, Victor made a sound that Jade had never heard before. Something between a choke and a laugh and an expression of profound offense. He sparkles, Victor said flatly. In sunlight. He sparkles like a disco ball. Like diamonds, technically. But yes. That is the most absurd thing I have ever witnessed. And I have lived through 800 years of human history, including several plagues and the entirety of medieval fashion. This is worse. Jade was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. I knew you'd hate it. Hate is insufficient. I am offended on behalf of all vampires, real or fictional. We are creatures of darkness and blood and eternal night. We do not sparkle. We do not attend high school. We do not engage in abstinence-only romance with bland teenage girls. Tell me how you really feel. I feel that this is an abomination against vampire mythology. Where is the danger? The predatory nature, the fundamental inhumanity of our existence. This vampire appears to be a sad vegetarian who drives a Volvo. He is literally a vegetarian vampire. They only drink animal blood. Victor looked like she'd personally insulted him. That is not vampirism. That is a dietary choice. A strange, limiting dietary choice. You're getting very worked up about a fictional vampire's eating habits. Because it is ridiculous. We are predators. That is what makes us compelling and terrifying. This film has removed everything interesting about vampires and replaced it with sparkles and high school and baseball. Oh right, there's a baseball scene. Why would vampires play baseball? Because it looked cool in the book, I guess? I don't know. Twilight doesn't really explain its choices. They watched the rest of the film, Victor providing increasingly hilarious commentary. He mocked Edward's brooding, I have lived centuries and I do not brood that much. Criticized the family dynamics, why do they pretend to be siblings if they are married to each other? And absolutely lost it during the sparkling scene that he demanded Jade replay 3 times. I cannot believe this was popular, he said when the credits rolled. Humans watched this and found it appealing. Millions of humans. It was a massive phenomenon. Team Edward versus Team Jacob was a legitimate cultural divide. Who is Jacob? Werewolf, who also loves Bella, becomes relevant in later films. There are more of these? 4 more. Absolutely not. I refuse. I have standards. We're watching them. All of them. Right now. Jade, I must protest. Nope. You wanted to understand vampire mythology in popular culture. This is essential education. We're doing this. Victor groaned like she'd sentenced him to death, which made Jade laugh even harder. They continued through the franchise, Victor's commentary becoming increasingly creative in its criticism. During New Moon, when Edward leaves Bella, excellent decision. She should remain left. This relationship is unhealthy. During Eclipse, when the love triangle intensifies, neither of these males are appropriate partners. She should choose independence and therapy. During Breaking Dawn Part 1, when the wedding happens, why is this vampire marrying a human? This can only end poorly. Also, the wedding dress is lovely. I approve of the aesthetic even as I condemn the decision-making. During Breaking Dawn Part 2, when the vampire baby is revealed, I have no words. The child looks terrifying. This is horror masquerading as romance. By the time the final film ended, Victor looked genuinely exhausted despite not actually needing to rest. That was the most emotionally draining experience of my existence, and I have survived wars. But you understand vampire pop culture now. I understand that popular culture has taken a mythological creature of terror and transformed it into a sparkly abstinence metaphor. I'm not certain this knowledge has improved my life. Jade was grinning so hard her face hurt. Admit it, you had fun. Mocking things is fun. I will admit that providing commentary on terrible films has a certain appeal, but I maintain that these movies are an offense against vampire dignity. Underworld had dignity, Twilight has sparkles, different approaches to the mythology. One approach has merit, the other has Edward Cullen. You're obsessed with Edward now. You've said his name like 20 times in the past hour. Because I cannot comprehend his existence. He is over a century old and he chooses to attend high school repeatedly. What kind of a mortal being makes that choice? A fictional one with questionable life priorities. Victor shook his head, looking genuinely disturbed. If that is what modern humans believe vampires are like, no wonder your world was unprepared for my arrival. You expected sparkles and vegetarianism. You got centuries of actual predatory instinct and combat training. Yeah, you're definitely more Victor than Edward. That is the greatest compliment you have ever paid me. Jade kissed him, tasting blood and amusement. You're ridiculous. I am justified in my criticism. You're both. Can you be both? I contain multitudes. They settled back on the couch, the marathon finally complete, both of them exhausted from very different causes. Jade was tired from laughing and watching movies for 8 hours straight. Victor was tired from having his entire understanding of vampire mythology challenged by sparkling teenagers. Okay, Jade said, pulling up her laptop one more time. Last thing. I promise this is the actual last thing. If you show me more sparkling vampires, I am leaving. Not sparkles, just regular vampire content. I want to show you what fans do with these stories. She pulled up Archive of Our Own, the massive fanfiction repository, and searched for Underworld fics. Thousands of results populated the screen. What is this? Victor asked. Fanfiction. Stories written by fans about characters from movies, books, TV shows. People take the worlds and characters they love and create new stories with them. Some are good, some are terrible, all are written by people who care deeply about the source material. Victor scrolled through the results, his expression shifting from confusion to fascination. There are thousands of stories about my character, about my world. Your fictional character has inspired a lot of creativity. Look, this one is about Victor surviving into modern times and having to adapt. This one is an alternate universe where Victor makes different choices about Sonia. This one is... okay, that one's extremely explicit and we're not reading that one together. I am intrigued by the explicit one. No, absolutely not. I'm not reading vampire smut about you with you. That's too meta even for me. Victor's mouth curved into a smile. You have read it though. The explicit stories about my character. Jade's face went crimson. I was 15 and discovering my sexuality through inappropriate internet content like every other teenager. Don't judge me. I am not judging. I am merely noting that your attraction to me predates my actual arrival in your world by several years, problem, or years. Yeah, I had a crush on a fictional character. It's not that weird. It is extremely weird and extremely flattering. You're enjoying this too much. I'm enjoying it the perfect amount. Jade closed the laptop before Victor could dig deeper into her internet history. Some things were better left unexamined, like the truly terrible Victor fanfiction she'd written when she was 16 that was still posted somewhere in the depths of fanfiction.net under a username she'd rather die than reveal. So, she said, changing the subject with all the grace of a brick through a window, what did you learn today? About yourself? About vampires in popular culture? Victor considered this seriously. I learned that fiction often reveals truth through exaggeration. The underworld films exaggerated my worst qualities, my pride, my rigidity, my capacity for cruelty, but in doing so, they helped me see those qualities more clearly. And Twilight showed me what happens when vampire mythology is stripped of danger and reduced to sparkles and romance. Both approaches have value, even if one has significantly more value than the other. Twilight approaches have value, even if one has significantly more value than the other. Underworld better than Twilight. Got it. Substantially better. Twilight is barely better than nothing. But you understand why people love it. The appeal of the forbidden romance, the fantasy of being special enough to attract an immortal being's attention. I understand the fantasy. I do not understand why the vampire in question had to be so aggressively boring. If you are going to create an immortal love interest, make him interesting. You're interesting. I am 800 years old and have lived through significant historical events. I would be concerning if I were not interesting. Jade laughed and settled against his side. The movie marathon had been ridiculous and perfect. Exactly the kind of absurd bonding experience their relationship seemed to specialize in. They'd watched Victor's fictional counterpart and mocked sparkly vampires, and somehow it had brought them closer. Thank you for watching those with me, she said. Thank you for showing me. It was enlightening, and occasionally painful, but mostly enlightening. Would you watch them again? Underworld, perhaps. Twilight, never. I have suffered enough for one lifetime. That's fair. They sat in comfortable silence, the evening stretching ahead of them. Jade's shift at Applebee's started in a few hours, which meant she needed to start getting ready soon, but for now, she was content to sit with Victor, processing their day of vampire cinema and cultural commentary. Jade? Victor said quietly. Yeah. Seeing those films, seeing how fiction interpreted vampire mythology, it made me realize something. What's that? Our relationship, our story, it is stranger than any fiction. More impossible than sparkles or high school vampires. A vampire from another world, bound to a human by blood magic, learning to navigate modern life through internet videos and roller coasters. No one would believe it if it were written as fiction. Truth, stranger than fiction. Classic. Indeed. But I find I prefer our impossible reality to any fictional alternative, sparkles included. Even though our reality is complicated and weird and probably unsustainable long term, especially because of that. Complicated and weird and unsustainable is infinitely preferable to simple and boring and predictable. Jade felt tears prick her eyes because he kept saying things that completely undid her. You're doing the thing again, the romantic thing. I am merely being honest. Your honesty is very emotionally devastating. I will work on being less honest. Don't you dare. Victor kissed the top of her head, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. Go prepare for your work. I will be here when you return, ready to hear about whatever complaints people have about their riblets. You remembered what riblets are? I remember everything you tell me. Every detail. Every silly complaint about your job. Every preference and opinion. I am paying attention, Jade. Always. Okay, now you're being unfairly sweet. Stop it. Never. Jade extracted herself from the couch reluctantly, heading upstairs to shower and change into her Applebee's uniform. As she got ready, she could hear the TV still playing downstairs. Victor had apparently decided to rewatch part of the first Underworld film, his curiosity about his fictional counterpart not fully satisfied. When she came back downstairs dressed for work, Victor was watching the scene where his character first meets Celine, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Jade asked. "About how fiction sometimes predicts truth. In these films, my character finds connection with someone unexpected, someone who challenges him and changes him. The specifics are different, but the core truth is the same. Art imitating life, imitating art. Very meta. Very us." Jade grabbed her keys and her bag, checking that she had everything for her shift. Victor stood, crossing to her with that predatory grace that still sent shivers down her spine even after everything they'd shared. "Be safe," he said, pulling her close. "Call me if you need anything. I will come immediately." It's Applebee's, not a war zone. Nevertheless, I am protective of what is mine. Possessive vampire boyfriend. How original. I prefer to think of myself as devoted rather than possessive. You can be both. Then I am both, devoted and possessive. You are stuck with me, little flame. Jade kissed him one more time, tasting blood and affection and home. I'm counting on it. Don't watch Twilight again while I'm gone. I don't want to come back to you having an existential crisis about sparkling. I make no promises. She left laughing, heading out into the evening, her mind full of vampire movies and Victor's commentary and the absolute absurdity of her life. She was dating a vampire who'd spent the day watching himself portrayed in film and mocking sparkly teenagers. This was her reality now. And honestly, she wouldn't change a single thing. When she returned home that night, exhausted and smelling like fried appetizers, she found Victor exactly where she'd left him. On the couch, her laptop open, apparently deep into reading fan fiction about his character with the focus of someone conducting serious research. "Find anything interesting?" she asked, dropping onto the couch beside him. These authors are quite creative, also quite explicit. I had no idea humans had such detailed fantasies about vampire intimacy. Welcome to the internet. We're all perverts here. I am not complaining. Some of these scenarios are quite imaginative. Please tell me you're not reading the smutty Victor Fix. I am absolutely reading the smutty Victor Fix for research purposes. Research. I wish to understand how humans fantasize about my character. It is educational. It's porn, Victor. You're reading porn about yourself. I prefer to think of it as character study. Jade buried her face in her hands. My boyfriend is reading fan fiction porn about his fictional counterpart. This is my life now. Your life is very strange. My life is very strange because of you.
And yet, you would not change it.
And yet I would not change it.
They sat together in the quiet darkness, Victor's laptop illuminating their faces, fan fiction scrolling across the screen. Outside, the world continued on, oblivious to the impossible romance happening in a small house in Maryland. A vampire and a human, bound by blood and magic and choice, navigating modern life one ridiculous day at a time. It was weird and complicated and absolutely perfect. And as Jade drifted off to sleep later that night, Victor's cool body wrapped around hers, she thought about fiction and reality and the strange space they occupied between them. Victor was real and fictional simultaneously, the actual vampire and the character inspired by vampire mythology. She was real and fictional too, in a way, the normal girl who'd become the protagonist of her own impossible romance. They were living a story no one would believe, and somehow that made it even more precious.
Ended episode 9.